Daniel Juma is the Executive Director at Global Peace Foundation, Kenya, and Dr. Tony Devine is the International Vice President for Education at Global Peace Foundation, USA. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibuni sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. So, introduce us to Global Peace Foundation. Kenya. Let's start with Kenya.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, thank you very much for having us again. So, we are the Global Peace Foundation. We are international non-profit. Our headquarters is in the United States of America. We have more than 25 chapters around the world. We believe that peace is not just the absence of war, that peace is structural, and the things we do are to address the issues that affect humanity. In Kenya especially, we have been focusing on education as a tool for peace building. So we believe that education is the most important weapon, like Nelson Mandela once said, that it is the most important weapon that you can use to change the world. So we have been working in this country since the year 2010 to transform education so that education can be the solution provider to the problems that we face in Kenya, in Africa, and the world. And indeed, education is critical because, and I believe that especially countries that have, high illiteracy levels are the ones that are more prone to violence, especially the kind of violence, the kind of problems, instabilities that you see, especially during elections. If people are literate, if people are well educated and they understand issues, they understand how to sort issues, not necessarily by fist. If they go through education, that it is indeed, it would be easier for us to solve our problems without having to go, fisting, beating one another.
I'm going to actually have to simply query that definition you've just provided.
Yes.
Would we say that the French have a literacy issue?
I wouldn't say that, but again, especially those who are going through the violence that you see right now, it's not always good to assume that everyone that is partaking in that problem have or don't have illiteracy issues.
So, is it a question of literacy or knowledge? Because you can be literate,
yes,
but you lack a certain specific knowledge on
I
certain
think it's
things.
knowledge.
It's knowledge.
More knowledge. Because those people who are now destroying property in France, I think they are responding to an issue.
Are they really responding to an issue? You see, this is the question that is asked.
Yes.
That's why I bring in knowledge.
Yes.
Because the very things that sometimes they are involved in destroying are probably things that are of use to them as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to ask the question, are you considering that you're actually damaging things that you yourself...
The trains that they use.
Yes, that you...
The infrastructure that
that
they use.
you benefit from.
So if they only had a retrospect
Yes.
and asked, is this really good for us? So that's where education comes in. And not just education in school, also civic education, so that people are able to understand the real issues, issues of national transformation, issues that are facing their country. So if you, for example, respond to, like Lumumba once say, responding to a...
We focus on the adults, right? The ones who are actually in the classrooms, running the systems and so on. And, we use this terminology, transformation, very intentionally, right? So in most conferences, most events, most discussions, dialogues that are going on in education today, they focus on systems, on structures and so on, and they're really missing out on the essence of transformation. So we actually have a theory of transformation, not just a theory of change. You can change something and it can change back in an instant, right? So transformation is a fundamental shift, right, in the way we go about things. And the focus, the essence of transformation is transforming people, the adults. So starting with the educators, the teachers, the principals, and so on, the more they show up as a better version of themselves, today than they did yesterday, that actually becomes a driver in creating an amazing culture in classrooms, an engaging culture where students love to be there, right? Day in and day out, and where they thrive, where they're inspired to continuously learn and be better themselves, be good people ultimately, right? And that's actually how the students actually transform themselves. They're always watching the adults.
Yep.
Always watching the adults, right? So this is not something you teach with the blackboard. This is about modeling, right? More than anything else.
Yeah.
And then we can achieve real transformative outcomes. We're preparing a generation of young people who can actually contribute to pathways of national transformation. For example, here in Kenya, to make Kenya a great nation, right, over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Not just an economical nation that moves up to the middle class, but a great nation, right? And also to prepare students to be really future ready in a very rapidly changing world, right? An ambiguous, uncertain kind of world, right? And I would like to add here that the essence of this transformation is the development of character. So since 2010, since we started our work here, Global Peace Foundation has emphasized over and over and over again for the past 13 years, we're literally the only ones talking about this, right? How important and how central character is, right? So character is a nation builder, and it's the antidote to corruption. Corruption is a nation killer, and it kills nations. Character actually helps to build nations, right? So we're putting a premium on that, and how that links to conscience and to spiritual consciousness. It's all about this alignment, right? To actually do good, to do righteous things, right? To love others and so on.
I'm interested to know how exactly you do this, because even as you talked about the essence of transformation and looking at the educators and ensuring that there are incentives to make them keep improving their knowledge and skills, that is how an education system is structured. That teachers are trained. You go into teacher training, you're trained to be a teacher, to handle students, and you are encouraged to continue going for continuous training, and that's how you get promotions. So by the time you're getting to a senior principal, you've actually gone through many training sessions. So how different are you then?
Yeah, so, we have a real issue in the global education world, right? It's not just here in Kenya, it's international, it's global. And this is like a kind of a miscue, a misunderstanding on the context of our world today. Our world is changing rapidly, right? So for example, just 123 years ago, knowledge was doubling every 100 years, right? But last year in 2022, knowledge was doubling every 12 hours. So the current education system, there's kind of a joke going around, right? That we have 21st century kids in classrooms taught by 20th century adults on a 19th century curriculum on an 18th century calendar, right? So the whole thing is out of date, right? It's kind of a joke, but it's actually the truth, right? So we have to have a paradigm shift in education if we're going to actually help society, nation building, civilization itself, right? And it has to focus on a new foundation, not on knowledge acquisition, but actually on the cultivation of character, right? And everything associated with that, and building on that to guide the development of relationships. Daniel was sharing about the issues of conflict, where, we do peace building, not just in the absence of conflict, but it's about building trust, building great relationships. And on top of that, character has to guide skills like creativity, entrepreneurship. These are value neutral. They need to be guided by good values and character. And regarding knowledge, it's no longer about what you know. It's actually about what you do with what you know,
you apply.
right? How is that the application of knowledge to solve problems and to be to add value to a given situation, right?
This is interesting, as this conversation is coming at a time where a lot, well, at the very least, is being said about an education system. Because what we're saying here is that what needs to happen is that there needs to be a complete, total rewiring of thinking in order to deliver an education that's going to help our children, bring them, and not even just children, those who are in whatever level of education.
Yes.
That there needs to be a rewiring, not just in terms of time, that we're living in a totally different time today than what people who were educated 20 years ago were, right? It's on this day, actually, that we see a report coming out from what was called a working party about how education will or will not change in this country. We're talking about decategorization, we're talking about funding, we're talking about all sorts of things. But we're dealing with brick and mortar as opposed to this rewiring that you're speaking of. That we can deliver a curriculum, we can provide the funds, we can hire teachers, pay them a little bit more in terms of a salary. But we're saying that if we don't change the intrinsic issues that are responsible for the delivery of this education, then we can do all this, but it's going nowhere. Is that what we're saying?
And that's basically what we're saying. It's like, the problem is that there's a preoccupation with systems, with structures, and so on, right? And we need to actually, these are important things. I'm not saying we can ignore them. We can't. We have to deal with these things. But that's not the primary thing. We have to focus on foundational things first and foremost, right? Which is this tectonic shift in our thinking and in the way education has to be approached. So, basically, the fundamentals of education has been to prepare people for a living, right? You go out, you have some kind of basic knowledge, you can earn a living, provide for your family, and so on, right? So yes, it has to do that, but more fundamentally, right, education and the influence that educators and teachers can have on the life arc of their students is actually preparing them for a life. So the life arc, right, the mindset has to shift from how you perform in a final exam to how you're going to actually be successful and prosperous and live a purposeful and meaningful life. A good teacher can have that kind of impact on their students. All of us here remember our one favorite teacher, right? And it was that kind of person. Why can't all our teachers be like that, right?
Why can't they, Daniel? Because you talk about focusing on one big exam is very interesting, because the reason why a new curriculum was introduced in Kenya was to take away this attention from you focusing on this one exam and look at wholesome learning, right? Again, I bring in the working party, CT's favorite party recently, and the removal of this attention on the exam is something that was then fundamental to this new curriculum. But now we've seen that the party has now reversed those roles and said, you know what? If this draft is approved, we're going to put a lot more attention on your final exam, on this big exam, because the scores, the numbers matter. And the other assessments in terms of the knowledge that you've then been able to grasp, maybe will take less points. But the big exam matters a lot. And here we are saying that we need to change that.
Yeah.
How would that happen in Kenya, and why is it important for it to
I know, and we have had this in a conversation when the reform of education started. This was the fundamental issue in this review. Where we're saying that you cannot judge a child by the result of just a 1 hour exam. Maybe during that exam, maybe he had issues. Maybe he had.
Maybe it wasn't a good day.
Maybe it wasn't a good day. Maybe he was stressed and he was able to not do well just that one day. But throughout his time in school, during the 8 years or during the 4 years, if it's high school, he has been a good student. That's why continuous assessment was seen to be a key. If, for example, these kids are continually assessed, so that you see this child has been a good boy in class. He has been cooperative. He has been disciplined, and he has been doing his homework on time. So these are things that should be able to earn these students' marks that should be able to count. That's why during our time, I think living certificates was also very, very important during those days, because it says Who are you? How are you when you were in school?
Describes your character.
Your character.
Those things didn't describe anyone's character.
How do they?
2 lines. Very intelligent, hardworking. How exactly does that tell anything about
It can add another line.
It should be,
Was
I
a
think
school
it should-
captain.
Yes.
Was a
class
student leader.
prefect.
That tells you something about that person.
So
I'm just trying to be polite. Not was a rabble rouser. You don't want to put that.
So-
You know, Juma, where I'm going with this,
Yes.
you are spot on. But if we are talking about students, we are actually talking about those who teach them.
Yes.
So then, should we focus on how those who teach are taught or how they're trained?
Absolutely. And that brings me to your first question.
Yes.
Why can these teachers be the same? Or why can they be? It's very, very important that the teacher who appears in the classroom, it's very, very key because, like Tony said, we all remember that one teacher. I remember my teacher, the teacher who shaped my English. He was very, very critical. Spelling mistakes was a big problem. Grammatical mistake, that would attract a cane. And I remember, we grew up with that kind of discipline. Yeah. So the teacher who comes to class, if I'm a teacher and I come to class shabbily dressed or drunk, smelling alcohol, or it's terrible because what am I showing this? Someone has entrusted you with these children. Like now, my children are in class. I've entrusted someone. I'm paying dearly for someone to take care of these children, and yet he shows up in class, maybe drunk or maybe
not at all.
No, not at. It's crazy. So the people who teach our kids, as parents, we must be keen on knowing who is it that is teaching our child.
Perhaps a few steps even before then.
Yes.
How we recruit them, because
Absolutely. And in Kenya,
yes,
let me just say this. This is a problem we have had. If you go to certain countries like Finland, Korea, or even the USA, to become even a kindergarten teacher is very, very, you require...
it's a rigorous process.
Yes, you require highly educated. You'll have to be highly qualified, highly educated to become a teacher. But what do we do in Kenya? You find that people who maybe wanted to become a lawyer, they didn't meet those standards. Then they are recruited as BOM or as trained teachers. And trained teachers. And do you know how much these people are being paid as BOM teachers? They paid 20,000 shillings, paltry. 20,000 shillings.
20,000 is a lot.
And trained
7,000,
Oh,
10,000,
7,500 shillings is what is
Yes.
paid
And-
to ECD teachers today.
Yes, and they come to the class and motivated. They come to class really, really, they're sad, dejected. And do you expect this person to be able to mentor your children? No, it can't happen. So in this review, what I think about this review, how we recruit teachers is very, very critical. I believe that the teacher is perhaps the most important profession. And it should be, very, very, teachers should be the most qualified, because the teachers teach doctors, teachers teach professors,
everybody.
even presidents.
Everybody.
And yet you require very low marks, for them to become. But, you cannot become a doctor in this country if you don't have those highest, A's or B's. So it's really, really, we must get our priorities right. So how we recruit these teachers is very, very important. How we motivate them is very, very critical if we are to attain the results that we want in our education.
Our guests this morning are talking about improving the quality of education in Kenya. And on that note, let me just plug in the Standard today. This is the headline in the Standard today. Ruto's radical CBC shakeup. The Standard has gotten some insights into what's called the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform in Kenya. The report and what they are due to discuss with the president. Buy a copy and get all this information. Our guests, Daniel Juma is Executive Director of Global Peace Foundation Kenya, and Dr. Tony Devine is the International Vice President for Education at Global Peace Foundation USA. CT, you had a question.
Well, yes, I was actually juxtaposing. I was thinking, when you talked about the French, where my mind traveled, the French Revolution. And my mind traveled the French Revolution and what caused it. Some of the events that led to the French Revolution, believe it or not, was the American Civil War. Not the other way around. just like the Second World War was one of the things that brought about the Mau Mau, because people went to the First World War and the Second World War, and that experience opened their eyes to all sorts of things. Now, come Second World War and the period after that, in Dr. Tony's neck of the woods, the term baby boomers or boomers came into being. They are noted for one specific thing. They looked at traditions that had been there and the way their parents and people went about things, and they said, nah, this is not working for them. When you heard of flower people, the hippie movement, that was the expression of rejecting certain things that they had seen over time. But it brought about a complete overhaul of the way people did things in his neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Now, we have something similar. Unfortunately, it's negative, because we seem to have evolved to a point where the way forward seems to be to find an avenue to be corrupt and to try and make as much money as you possibly can doing whatever it is you need to do. Now, when you look at the sort of money that is allocated for education in our country, and then you look at what is actually done, you don't need to be very good at maths to realize that all that money doesn't go into education. Because if it did, and in the manner in which it is suggested it would, then there would be phenomenal changes. So, when you come into a situation such as ours with your eyes wide open, how do you begin the process of bringing about the sort of change that I've just been describing as a background, where you get an entire generation that looks at the way their parents and probably their grandparents did things, and they say, no, this is not the way to do things, because if we continue this way, we will not really go far with this. So that we can catapult an entire new generational change. How do you do this with the thrust that you have in education?
You want to go, Tony?
Yeah. This is a great question here, right? And I do think we have, especially here in Kenya, right, in Africa, there's like an unprecedented opportunity right now, right, with a new generation who will make a commitment. They're going to make a choice, right, a decision not to engage in corruption, right, but instead to actually put an emphasis on building their character literally on a daily basis, right? In alignment with their conscience, in alignment with spiritual consciousness, because that is actually what will catapult Kenya into a great nation going forward. And that is what will attract foreign investment. It will actually facilitate the proper due diligence, right, and governance over funding, money, etc., right? But as long as corruption, the elephant in the room, remains, Kenya will not move forward to Vision 2030, right, and the aspirations that people have. So we have to deal with this elephant in the room. And, I heard yesterday that by 2050, 1 in 4 people on Earth are going to be Africans, not African Americans, but from the continent of Africa, right? So Africans are going to have a huge influence in the world in 25 years' time. The question is, what kind of influence, right? So, think about it for a second. In 25 years, the entire school population, primary, secondary, college, this is from 1 day old to 25 years old, they're going to be running the country, right? This is a whole generation that's in the school system right now, right? Yeah. So it's like, this is why in our event today, our Transforming Education Summit, we brought together stakeholders from multiple sectors, right, to put our heads together on what we can do. This is urgent, right? We have an urgent mission in front of us. Teaching is really a mission. It's not a job, right? So what can we do to actually help develop the character, right, values, great relationships, and so on, so to make sure that this generation that you're speaking about, right, can actually set Kenya, East Africa, Africa on a trajectory of great prosperity, right, and that can actually influence the entire world. The opportunity you have right now is unprecedented, right? And we cannot be going on as we have. It needs a paradigm shift. And we need to start this like literally today, right? We can't wait till next year or the year after. It's going to be too late.
Just to add on that, I think the educators must continue learning. We cannot say that we cannot stop learning. Everybody in the ecosystem of education must learn and relearn, continue learning, because education keeps changing. Today, for example, with artificial intelligence, for example, everything, if you're a teacher, everything you're going to be teaching those students in class is already on ChatGPT. It's artificial intelligence. So, and we could be discussing now what is going to be the role of the teacher in future, because then if I have my kids and I have ChatGPT, ChatGPT will tell them how, for example, to do their homework, how to write an essay, everything that maybe they would have wanted to learn. So what is going to be the role of the teacher moving forward? So even teachers must be very careful that they are not displaced, in moving forward. Because, and I said this in one of the meetings that I had, that artificial intelligence is here to stay. Just like before, when email came, some people thought emails would go away. These things are here to stay. So what is going to be the role of the teacher moving forward?
To teach the machine.
And not just even in education, even in the workplace. Do you know that the news presenters in future will be artificial intelligence? A robot will be reading news.
There's something I want you to understand.
Let's focus on education.
Artificial.
I'm sorry.
And it exists because some human being created
Yes, it's some human being is
it will
behind.
support.
Yes.
It will help.
Yes.
It will make certain things better,
Yes.
easier,
Yes.
but it will not be able to
Replace the human.
No, it will not.
I know that.
We have to be careful here on this one, right? Because there are people in the artificial intelligence spectrum, right, that actually want to make general artificial intelligence on an equal footing with biological intelligence, right? This is a real thing.
Yep.
And this is where, the people who are actually training the AI have to be people of good character,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
And have, the AI is being trained, right?
Yep.
And you can train it to lie. It can be corrupt as well, right?
Yep.
The problem with the AI is that it is the biggest disruptor we've ever seen, right? So it can actually scale, and it can actually scale a very good idea. It can actually provide a lot of good. It's really an extension of ourselves, but it can also scale a very bad idea, right? And it can cause a real mess, right, to humanity. So, this is where like our students, our educators have to be members of the Wide Awake Club and not just take these technologies for granted, that this is the absolute truth here. You've got to be asking critical questions. Who's training the AI, right? And, we have to dig a little bit deeper here and not just take things for granted. So we want to really, more than ever before, we need, educators who are working on their own character, right? And improving themselves on a day-by-day basis. It's not just continuous learning, but also continuous development of yourself. So you're showing up as a better version of yourself tomorrow than you did today. Then the students will emulate that. This is really the front line right now, right?
Even as we talk about, character and how it must be developed in order to continue to deliver this, it is clear, though, that all of these things work in a cycle, in an almost kind of continuum. Because, yes, you can say that I am here, it's a calling in teaching, right? But at the same time, you have a life to lead, and there is the compensation that is necessary and is almost a catalyst of what you will do. We can talk about character development, but at the end of the day, people need to survive, right? And that is one of the things that they will take into consideration, as who gives them the best in terms of compensation.
Yeah.
That's likely what they're going to gravitate towards. And as I think about this and I ask myself, are we ready? And I'm not just talking about Kenya, I'm talking as Africa as a whole. we're talking about new technology, we're talking about new ideas, we're talking about new things, but are we ready to embrace what comes along with that? Are we even ready to get into it? It has become a buzzword, but COVID was an eye-opener, especially in education, whereby you could not meet face-to-face. The teacher could not speak to the children directly, and we still were not able to deliver an education to these kids. We were not. We can say we tried. We can talk about Zoom until the cows come home, but it did not work. It did not work because the infrastructure and the will did not exist. And I can argue and say until today, it still does not exist to a certain level.
Yeah. Let me just say.
What is it that needs to happen to get us from... Because we can talk about the technology, Daniel, you know very well.
Yes.
You can talk about AI today in a school whereby they're talking about swimming and there is no swimming pool. Where the infrastructure does not exist. How are you going to motivate a teacher who is teaching certain things in certain subject areas and has a counterpart in a city somewhere else, not just in Kenya, in another part of the world, and they're supposed to deliver the same level? How?
I think the foundation here is very critical. And when it comes to Kenya, like an issue you alluded to, that you have a teacher who is coming to class and has issues to think about.
Yep.
You know, I'll be very direct. Our county government, do you know how much they're paying ECD teachers?
Yes,
How much?
7,560 shillings.
7,500?
And 60.
Yeah, so that is absurd. That should stop right away, because the ECD teacher is the one giving the foundation, teaching this child how to talk, how to write. You know, so these are the people that should be remunerated better than others. You understand? So this is a calling. As we do this today, it's a calling to the county governments that they need to step up. They need to recruit our ECD teachers properly, pay them well, and if they can't do that, I would want the Minister of Education to take over. You know, this should revert back to the Minister of Education, not to county government, because some county government do not see the importance of these ECD teachers.
National government was not better.
Yeah.
Remember, how much the counties are paying is an improvement
Oh, really?
of what the national government was paying ECD, nursery school teachers.
So, but anyway, so it's very, very critical that we look at the whole ecosystem, but not just even the teachers. The MOE must also, continue learning and relearning.
Yeah.
But must also be people of good character. If you put good people in the Ministry of Education, that means our funds are secure. That means that the money that you talked about, billions of shillings, are going to be allocated, and you're going to ensure that money reaches where it's supposed to be. You look at the issue of the building of classrooms when CBC came. I know there's a lot of money that were allocated to ensure that these classrooms are built. You need good people to implement government policy to ensure that money that was allocated actually reaches, where it's supposed to be.
So how do we get these good people? And what is good? How do we define good?
Don't they exist?
Character is a social construct.
Character is key, and maybe Tony can answer that.
Yeah, this is something that all of us have to work on, right? So, it's not just the students, but it's really like the adults, the educators. They're the ones we're focusing on, right? And, it's like this is intentional work. It's a priority. You have to wake up every morning and say, hey, what part of my character should I work on today, right? Can I be more honest? Can I be more, courageous, or whatever it may be, right? Can I love people better, or whatever, right? Why would we want to make that a priority? Because this is where the greatest value add can be made, right, on a daily basis, right? Do you know what I mean? The better you become, the more value add you can bring. And that's why fundamentally, in the education sector, Daniel is right, that this is the most important profession. It's meant to be the most important profession because you're influencing a whole generation here, right? And it's really it's a mission. It's not a job, right? It's actually people going into the education world, right? They should be primarily driven by the mindset that I'm on a mission. right? To influence this whole new generation to make the nation better.
But how do
down the
we
road.
ensure that that person, because this person could actually believe that they're on a mission to change, right? But what they are changing is they're changing from the good to bad.
Yes.
Are we all in agreement what good character is all about? Today, if you went to all those hundreds of thousands of teachers and you went to the Teacher Service Commission and look at, can you say that we have 60% teachers of good character and 40% teachers of bad character? How do we define this character we're talking about?
We don't even discuss that. We talk about the level of education. Are they S1, P1? Are they graduate teachers? Are they science teachers? Are they... that's how we describe our teachers.
Because we can.
Yes.
Because this other character thing, we cannot define it.
Well, this is where we need literally massive new types of professional development, right? For our existing continuous professional development for our existing educators and teachers and professors, right? In the TVETs and the universities as well, right? And that's what we're doing today, right? This is professional development, a new type of professional development, focusing on the essence of transformation. So we need more conversations, more stakeholders who are talking about this. We're talking about this on the radio and TV today. This is really an important conversation. So we need to amplify and echo this more and more and more accelerated, actually. We need more people talking about this and working on it.
Okay. One would assume that the conversations that are being had with the teachers, the practitioners, the ones who are in the classroom, on the beat, teaching these children, imbibing all of this, what do they say? I'm curious as to hear what they say. Do they feel when they're teaching, they say, actually, you know what? I need to be rewired. I am at the point whereby I realize that if overall education, my wires are non-existent, or there's a yellow one instead of a green one, right? Do they admit, do they feel that it is necessary to have a fundamental, foundational shift if we're going to deliver this education? Because if they don't, then we can be talking about something else.
It's very critical.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we are talking about training here. Teacher training should be redefined. How we train these teachers, I think the issues of character, issues of background checks, needs to be, looked at, so that you are sure that you don't have a teacher who has, for example, mental health issues in the classroom, who is going to, just blow up or something. So, and I also know that when we started, for example, CBC, the issue came up of retraining these teachers, and it was really a really big issue. And this is something that needs to be relooked at. The Teacher Service Commission should have continuous training, rewiring,
But
the so-called, of these teachers.
My argument today is that these things happen.
Yes.
Even before you get to teacher training.
Yes.
In school, in basic education, your character is being shaped. And that's why there's levels of different degrees and levels of punishment. To a point where, yes, you are even suspended. Go home, come with the parents so we can correct, because your character is getting offline. In employment, there are all these assessments. If, for example, a community says sees a teacher who is continuously turning up to school drunk, action is taken. If it's a teacher who is corrupt, is teachers who are involved in impregnating their students, action is taken. So when we say we need to reshift how we train our teachers, what exactly are we saying? How can we even put up a curriculum that says this is what good character is? You shall smile 3 times a day?
I know. I know, but I think the system is there. The system is there, and I can tell you for free that there are really very good teachers in this country. Very good teachers. Some are in private schools, some are in public schools. Transformational teachers, and I think that some of these very good teachers, maybe they are 40% or 50%, can be the model that helps also to redefine and also self-regulate the teaching profession. I know in this country we have, for example, the unions have been on the forefront of advocating for teachers' rights, But I've been calling for that, rather than having the unions calling for the rights of these teachers, Can we have something like the teachers, like the Law Society of Kenya, like the Teachers Society of Kenya, that not just looking for the rights, but also are continually self-regulating the profession, continually coming up with best practices that can be used to train these teachers.
So like we have East Park,
yes, like
Institute of
East Park.
Engineers,
Yes, so
Law
we need
Society.
that. Not just NAT and CUPET. These are just calling for salary increase. But we need to professionally develop these teachers. And it is high time teachers of Kenya come up with the Teachers Society of Kenya, like LSK, East Park, to have self-regulation, have self-development, so that this profession can again be rewired and can be made, great again, like they would say in America.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the rewiring, right? And this is where ideally, right, any teacher will have the honest self-awareness, right, on a daily basis. Hey, this is my self-assessment where I'm at today. I need to work on this one thing today or this week. I need to work on something else next week, because I want to keep improving myself. I want to keep showing up as that better version of myself, right? And in order to trigger that, we need new types of interventions, right? New types of, training, capacity building. So that's what we're striving to do in Global Peace Foundation, even with our Transforming Education Summit today. This is not like a regular summit on education. We're actually zeroing in on the essentials, on the foundations, right, of where we want to be going here. So we need lots and lots and lots of new types of capacity building. You know the phrase, right? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't believe that. I believe an old dog can learn new tricks, right, with the right kind of an intervention, and
The right
also
kind of tricks.
the right, incentives and so on, right? And, aspiration even, it's like, it's stimulating their aspiration. I can make a significant difference. Maybe I didn't do great so far, right? But hey, I've got X number of years left. I can do something amazing, right?
Yeah.
And that person can make a new decision, right? So, if we believe this, right? You know what I mean? It's a believing in that humanity can be their best selves.
Keep bettering ourselves.
Exactly. Like growing, developing.
Which is what today's summit is all about.
That's what it's all about.
Transforming Education Summit. Where is it? At KICC?
At the Panari, just
at
here.
the Panari.
Around
Mombasa Road.
Yeah, Mombasa Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bringing in all stakeholders in the education sector.
Yes.
And well-wishers.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning, gentlemen.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Good conversation and good debate. We need to have it. And I think I like that idea. Institute of Teachers of Kenya.
Awesome.
You get PD points to rise up.
Yeah.
To the next level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Daniel Juma is the Executive Director of Global Peace Foundation Kenya, and Dr. Tony Devine is the International Vice President for Education at the Global Peace Foundation USA.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.